Alright, this will be quite straightforward and simple. Mina the Hollower has the worst gameplay I've seen this year, and this isn't a matter of exaggeration. Of course, there will be worse games around, but I don't go digging for slop, and of course, I already played worse games this year and the year before. I couldn't finish Chronos the New Dawn because I literally dozed off in a horror game, or Rogue Trader, who elevated my pressure so hard my head nearly was fired off as if I was a human cannon. But on both of these games, it was a mix between bad gameplay, boring story, lackluster designs, and so on. First, if you liked Mina the Hollower, if you already 100% it with a hand behind your back using your tongue to press the buttons, good for you! This won't justify how much of a train wreck this gameplay is. One can have a lot of fun with titles whose gameplay is absurdly broken and awful. I myself like Divine Cybermancy, and oh boy, that gameplay couldn't be any worse. Plus, I finished and enjoyed Elden Ring, and even then I wasn't stopped from calling out how the bosses were turned awful. Second, I consider hard but fair games that reward mastery of the gameplay and push your skills to the limit and don't cheat, as in, it gives you the rules of the gameplay and obeys them. For example, Sekiro and Enter the Gungeon. Third, I consider niche games, or as more people say, this is not the kind of game for you, games that revolve around a specific gameplay mechanic that aren't fit for everybody, but this gameplay itself is finely tuned. Two examples are Hi-Fi Rush, that only people with rhythm can play, and Pragmata, who demands players to split their attention, and not everyone can do that. Mina the Hollower's sole gigantic problem is how literally, and I do mean literally, every single aspect of its gameplay isn't hard, it's downright infuriatingly broken. I kept yelling, who the f thought that this would be a good idea, over and over and over as I played. This game feels as if Yacht Games tried to blend several titles, most of all Bloodborne with the tone, depth, healing and boss mechanics, Castlevania with the aesthetics, sidearms and smaller elements, and Link's Awakening with the perspective, map distribution, and puzzles. At first, mixing these three would be a match in heaven. After all, Soulsborns are exploration games that reward careful behavior. Symphony of the Night was the first Metroidvania game to blend exploration with gothic horror and a thick story, and Zelda are also top-down, whimsical games about exploration and puzzles. Except that here everything was thrown into the cauldron, not even a blender, and went unchecked and unfiltered. Everything about the core Soulsborne mechanics, healing, map, death, is basically screaming at the player to pay attention and go slowly. There is a saying in the Soulsborne community, no, not the Get Good one, that the hardest Soulsborne game will be always your first, because new players aren't used to how things are done. And after adjusting, all the others will be far easier. If you rush into a room without thinking, the game will hit you with a stick using ambushes and traps. It rewards you for singling out enemies and killing them with strategies. It starts slow with zombies and picks up the pace. The original Castlevania was indeed hard as balls, but it was basically a platformer with Symphony of the Night cranking up things to 11, and Zelda, being Zelda, is a rather chill game where the whole package of exploration is assisted by tools, maps, and such in order to help with the puzzles. How does Mina messes everything up? First, the healing mechanics. Generally, Soulsborne games have a gimmick in their healing systems. Most, if not all, are heavily limited and take a while to take effect. As said before, this is generally made to push a cautious gameplay. Bloodborne slightly changes the formula by giving an extra mechanic to reward aggression. If you were hit, you can recover part of your lost health by hitting back, but it doesn't exclude normal healing as well. Mina the Hollower for some reason got all these gimmicks into the same healing system, and as if playing telephone with an octogenarian, it messed things up. In order to heal, Mina has to hit an opponent to charge up her vial, then slowly consume her vial. If you are hit, you lose the charge. If you are hit while healing, you lose the charge and the vial. If you don't have a charge, you can't heal. So you can finish an enemy and still be at death's door unable to heal. Of course, mix the fact that, unlike Dark Souls, enemies are really fast and home on Mina easily due to the small screen. And retreating isn't a viable option because finding charges in the wild, even worse, vials in the wild, can be extremely hard due to luck. Who the f in the Nine Hells would think that this was a good idea? It's just frustrating, forcing the player to go back more often to the already scantily distributed checkpoints. Either you stick to classic Dark Souls or ditch it completely in favor of something else. Silksong and Hollow Knight allow you to store charges beyond what you already damaged to use for a pulse heal, and you don't lose charges on being hit. Mina doesn't normally store charges beyond what she received as damage, unless you get a specific accessory that allows you to hold charges like Hollow Knight. Why not let this from the get-go and the accessory gives you a secondary bar? Speaking of death, hey, it's Dark Souls mechanics of leaving your stuff in death. Except that here it's worse. In Soulsborne games, you just leave a sign that you can touch regardless if you kill the thing that slaughtered you in the first place or not. In Mina, you have sparks that serves as lives, and the creature that killed you absorbs your spark, so you have to kill it to get it back. If you die without sparks, you lose all the bones that weren't turned into jewels. Oh, and to get into specific houses, you need said sparks. So if you wanted to get a better code to fight that boss who just wiped the floor with your ass, tough luck! Who the f would think that this was a good idea? But you won't die much if the combat mechanics are good, right? Yeah, except that combat mechanics here are downright awful. Combat is the thing you'll be doing most in games such as these, and thus, they need to be seriously well calibrated. This doesn't happen here. Mina can only hit on 4 directions, while your foes can hit you from any point at any time. Their whole sprites count as hitboxes for contact damage, even if it wouldn't make sense. For example, in Link to the Past, Link can actually hit in more than 4 directions, and you have the soldier enemies whose whole deal is that they charge at you. Yet, the game acknowledges perspective. Their hitboxes are by their base, not their heads, not their whole bodies. Why can't the enemies in Mina the Hollower do the same? If an enemy is jumping or flying, it still counts as a hazard in an already tiny arena chock full of other hazards. It doesn't have to be so. No, the head of a giant enemy doesn't have to count as contact damage. This just pushes the players to always attack from below. The arenas themselves are already insanely infuriating, using tricks that were deemed unfair and frustrating in the NES era, such as bats that will swoop in as soon as you try to jump chasms. And of course, the enemies hit like a truck. So if you get hit 2 or 3 times, you have to crawl back to a checkpoint in order to not die. Sure, there is the hollowing gameplay, where Mina dives into the earth, but this ends as the first big point of contention. By itself, this is okay, it has good applicability in the game, but the game doesn't build the combat around this mechanic. For example, to take into account players not having the full attention on screen, Pragmata slows down the enemies and the hacking menu only takes part of the screen. In Mina the Hollower, parrying is vital, but arenas are chock full of enemies or pits or hazards or bosses that are so huge that digging up feels useless. Enemies keep following you even when you're beneath the earth, making it feel as if the game is immediately countering the very same thing it gave you before you could even get used to it. The side weapons inspired by Castlevania were also badly implemented. If you die, you lose both the weapon and its charges, force you to grind for it again. This works for Castlevania because it's a straightforward platformer. When you die and respawn, there will be a weapon close by. In a top-down explorer like Zelda, these sidearms are turned into tools which you can swap and use anytime for a goddamn good reason. Oh hey, I just got the bicycle to finally go over that annoying chasm puzzle. Oh no, I died. Now I have to trek all the way back to find the damn bicycle again. Oh, I just found a puzzle that requires the axe. I need to go all the way back to the main town to find it. And what's worse, sometimes the game will give you a downright useless weapon for a specific area. You can buy upgrades to allow you to keep one side weapon and retain them after death, but that requires finding a specific NPC, the game won't tell you about it, and it's still just one side weapon. There are several situations that will require something different. And there are so many downright useless side weapons. Skipping stones that only work on water? Really? And oh lord, the lack of a good explanation or exploration. The exploration is seriously hampered by the lack of a good detailed map. There is a map in Mina the Hollower, but it's not useless and there is no hint whatsoever in the game of its existence, even less its location. You have to do a small side quest for the Hollower Guild and save a lady south of the main town. I nearly fixed the first generator without realizing the map existed due to the place being blocked by a key, and most of the gated spots I had found so far were roughly just shortcuts. I just assumed that it was another shortcut to be unlocked later. And fixing this would be insanely easy, just leave a hollow but interactable spot on your inventory, and if the player hovers the mouse or get over it, it shows map not yet found. And make the guy on the guild say, oh, our map maker has been kidnapped. Oh, but Dark Souls didn't have a map, you may say, except that Dark Souls games were three-dimensional. You could look where you are going, you could see where you are. The dungeons were surprisingly small and well built, so you rarely got lost because all you had to do was get close to a window and check your progress. You can't do the same in a top-down 2D game. You need a freaking map, especially when there are so many hidden chambers and so on. Nearly all Zeldas have a map for this reason. Even Elden Ring, a Soulsborne, gave up and added a map. About the lack of guidance, other reviewers explored this point far better than I did, but not wanting to hold your player's hand and completely throwing them into oblivion are two very different things. And a great opportunity to teach the player is right at the Hollower's Guild. Why not use the rookie as a small tutorial? But what made me give up was the nasty surprises that this game hides at every corner. I like exploring. It gives me that nice tingle in my brain when I find a hidden path and get a nice gift earlier than I expected. But Mina the Hollower has a nasty, really nasty habit of hiding mini or secret bosses where you least expect it. If this was a Zelda game, sure, okay, you just quaff a potion. In Soulsborne games, you really need to get off the beaten path to find the secret bosses. But this is Mina the Hollower. You'll be down in 3 or 4 hits and then have to trek all the way back to a mother that takes half of your screen because it now has one of your sparks. The point where I said f this and quit was when I tried to upgrade the damn Belmont whip and suddenly was forced to fight a gimmicky boss that takes 1/4 of the screen and can only be hit from below, because he immediately retaliates when attacked from the sides and he is too damn tall. He will give contact damage as soon as he moves. When I killed him, I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel a nice sense of fulfillment. I was so truly pissed that I tried to return this game, but I couldn't because Steam is still draconian with returning policies. And I'm not even touching the minor nuisances like button configuration or how you use a key immediately as soon as you touch a lock, where any sane developer would ask the player with a prompt. If you dodge an enemy and land in front of a lock, say goodbye to that hard-earned key. All these problems were the ones I found in the first 3 hours of gameplay. I talked about these problems with people, and the replies I got, discounting the usual useless "get good" or "this game isn't for you" crowd, were, "Oh, but it gets easier later when you upgrade." It doesn't matter. The gameplay itself is still hella bad and broken. Giving a nitro boost to a Pinto won't make it less likely to blow up if it touches a leaf. And second, oh, but you can edit the minutiae of the game. To which I replied that, pretty much like Rogue Trader, giving your player the means to fine-tune the difficulty at first looks like a nice touch, but you just admitted that you couldn't fine-tune the difficulty yourself. Because in the end, why the do you think that the most used accessories are the ones that let you heal Knight immediately and the extra life? And yeah, it does get easier. After cooling my jets, I returned to this game and started from scratch. After beating the first generator and accumulating enough levels, fixing the second generator was a breeze, especially after I mastered the hammer. Hell, I'm not even ashamed of saying that I had fun and beat a boss without being hit. But even then, this doesn't change how the gameplay is messed up, which is a shame because the music and art direction are really good. And while it's a tad too late to fix some of the base problems, there is still some time for a fine-tuning that could make this game less frustrating. So no, please don't go with the hype and stay away from this game at least till it's fixed, if it gets fixed. Yacht Games needs a huge overhaul of its systems before it even becomes playable. You know a great game that did everything Mina wanted to do and did so absurdly better? Tunic! It doesn't hold the player's hand, it is inspired on Zelda with some Dark Souls elements, it makes exploring interesting and it is challenging in the right way, so go buy that instead. Again, if you already played Mina, if you found it nice, if you didn't have any difficulty with it, good for you. Seriously, good for you. But my task as a reviewer, even if a hobbyist, is to check the engine of the car and point out that pretty much like a DeLorean, it may look awesome, but it's problematic as hell. That's all for today. Thank you very much and see you all next time. Remember to like and subscribe.